camera glides slowly over the peaceful, tree-lined streets of Chatswood as the golden hues of twilight fade into dusk. Birds chirp lazily in the distance, and the occasional car passes by, its headlights cutting through the gathering darkness. The tranquil hum of suburban life is suddenly shattered by a woman's blood-curdling scream, a scream that is abruptly silenced, leaving behind an unsettling void. The screen flashes to 6:30 p.m. on April 27, 2010, as emergency calls flood police switchboards, dispatchers' voices tense with urgency. A couple out walking their dog freezes in horror as they stumble upon the grisly scene. Michelle Beets, a 57-year-old nurse, lies sprawled across her veranda, her body drenched in blood. Her throat has been savagely slit, and multiple stab wounds puncture her chest and neck, each wound speaking to a frenzy of violence. Paramedics arrive within minutes, but it's already too late. The brutality of the attack leaves no chance of survival. Detectives surveying the scene immediately recognize the hallmarks of a premeditated killing. The electricity to her home had been deliberately cut, disabling outdoor lights and alarms. The door to her shed shows signs of forced entry. A clumsy attempt to stage a burglary. The killer hadn't acted on impulse, they had lain in wait, studying Michelle's routines, biding their time like a predator stalking prey. As the camera lingers on the bloodstained doorstep, the narrator's voice cuts through the tension, low and grave. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a random act of violence. This was a meticulously planned execution, years of resentment boiling over into one merciless, unforgiving act. The screen fades to black, leaving only the echo of those words hanging in the air. Asterisk. The screen floods with warm, intimate snapshots of Michelle Beets' life. Her radiant smile as she poses with colleagues after a long hospital shift. Her gentle hands comforting an elderly patient. Her adventurous spirit captured mid-laugh during a hiking trip with her partner David. The images transition to emotional interviews with those who knew her best. A senior doctor wipes away tears as he remembers. Michelle wasn't just our nurse manager. She was the beating heart of this emergency department. When she walked into a crisis, you immediately felt safer. Another colleague chuckles while recalling Michelle's famous no-nonsense attitude. She had zero tolerance for laziness or incompetence. Her glare could wither you on the spot. But God help you if you were truly in need. I once saw her stay 16 hours straight with a dying cancer patient because she refused to let anyone die alone. The mood darkens as the camera reveals hospital security footage from months before the murder, Michelle speaking urgently to administrators, her body language tense. A coworker's voice drops to a whisper. She told us about him. Walter Marsh. Said he'd been hanging around her neighborhood, calling at strange hours. That man is starting to really freak me out, she said. We should have listened. The screen cuts to Marsh's personnel file. His Marine Corps photo shows a hulking, square-jawed man with cold, calculating eyes. A former supervisor shakes his head. When we terminated his contract, he became obsessed with Michelle. Convinced she blacklisted him across Sydney. The truth? He was dangerous. We had complaints from 3 female staffers about his temper. As the camera lingers on Michelle's discarded hospital ID badge in an evidence bag, the narrator's voice turns grave. To Walter Marsh, Michelle wasn't a person anymore. She was an obstacle. And he had a Marine's training in how to remove obstacles permanently. The screen fades to black as the faint sound of a knife being sharpened plays in the distance. The investigation peels back layers of Walter Marsh's disturbing psyche like a slow-motion nightmare. Former Marine comrades describe a man who never truly left the battlefield, discharged under unclear circumstances, carrying a festering bitterness that poisoned every aspect of his life. Financial records reveal a man drowning in $50,000 of child support debt back in America, desperate to avoid returning at all costs. Surveillance footage shows Marsh's chilling routine in the weeks before the murder, his hulking frame appearing like a shadow outside Michelle's home at precisely 6:15 p.m. every evening, studying her patterns with military precision. Phone records paint an even more disturbing picture. 37 calls to Michelle's landline in 2 weeks, each time to monitor when she arrived home from work. The most damning testimony comes from his terrified wife Samantha, whose hands shake as she tells investigators, "He would pin me down at night and demonstrate Marine knife techniques. Tracing the blade along my throat while whispering, this is how you make sure they never scream." The screen cuts to black and white reenactments of the murder night, Marsh purchasing second-hand clothes with cash, his hands steady as he methodically cuts the power to Michelle's home. The attack unfolds in horrifying snippets, Michelle's keys jingling as she steps from her car, the sudden blur of movement, a gloved hand clamping over her mouth. The camera lingers on Michelle's widening eyes in the instant she recognizes her attacker, then mercifully cuts away as Marsh's blade flashes. Security footage from Chatswood Mall shows Marsh's eerie calm afterward, casually disposing of the murder weapon in a trash bin, changing jackets in a public restroom, even stopping to check his reflection before melting into the evening crowd. A veteran homicide detective shakes his head. This wasn't crime of passion, this was a tactical operation. He treated Michelle like an enemy combatant. The segment ends with a freeze frame of Marsh's face caught on CCTV. His expression showing neither remorse nor exhilaration, just the cold satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Asterisk. The courtroom becomes an arena where grief and evil collide in stark relief. On one side, Michelle's family and colleagues sit shoulder to shoulder, their faces etched with exhaustion from 7 long months of waiting for justice. On the other, Walter Marsh lounges in the dock like a spectator at a mildly interesting play, his marine posture perfect even as his face betrays flashes of amusement. The air grows thick when Samantha Marsh takes the stand, her slight frame dwarfed by the witness box. In halting English, she recounts the night of April 27th, how her husband returned home smelling of sweat and metal, how he'd whispered, "The bitch is gone, no more bad references," while washing blood from his hands. The prosecution then plays the chilling voicemail left for journalist Clementine Cuneo, Marsh's voice, eerily calm, admitting, "I had to do it for the money," followed by a bizarre ramble about terminal cancer and funding his wife's business in Vietnam. The coroner's clinical description of Michelle's wounds turns stomachs, 14 precise stab wounds, the deepest plunging 12 centimeters into her chest, each thrust delivered with what the medical examiner calls the efficiency of someone trained to kill. Marsh yawns during this testimony, scratching at his wrist scars from his failed suicide attempt. When the jury foreman announces the guilty verdict after just 8 hours of deliberation, Marsh's reaction becomes instant true crime legend. He first smirks, then actually chuckles, before making a mocking tut-tut sound at Michelle's weeping sister. The judge's sentencing speech rings through the wood-paneled courtroom like a hammer on anvil. "You took a scalpel to society's fabric when you murdered Michelle Beets. Your military training should have been used to protect, but you weaponized it against a defenseless woman. The only mercy this court will show is ensuring you never walk free again." As guards lead him away, Marsh turns back to give Michelle's loved ones one last grin, the smile of a man who still believes he's won. The camera lingers on the empty dock, its polished wood now holding only the ghost of his arrogance. Asterisk. The passage of time reveals the true measure of a life. 5 years. 10 years. The seasons change, but Michelle Beets' presence remains indelible in the places she once walked. At Royal North Shore Hospital, the Michelle Beets Award for Inspirational Pediatric Care now adorns the wall of the emergency department she once commanded. Each year funding $25,000 worth of life-saving equipment for Sydney's youngest patients. Her photograph, forever smiling in her crisp white nursing uniform, watches over the bustling ER like a guardian angel. In quiet moments, veteran nurses still tell wide-eyed trainees about the legendary nurse manager who could stop a code blue with just a look, yet held the hands of dying patients through their final breaths. David Grant, his dark hair now silvered by grief, makes his weekly pilgrimage to Michelle's grave, always bringing fresh flowers from their garden. "She'd be mortified by all this fuss," he tells the camera with a watery smile, tracing her name engraved in the granite. "But if one child lives because of equipment bought in her name, if one nurse finds their calling because of her story, then maybe." His voice breaks as a spring breeze carries petals across the cemetery lawn. Meanwhile, in a concrete cell at Long Bay Correctional Center, Walter Marsh's final days unfold in bitter isolation. Denied parole at every hearing, his once powerful frame now gaunt from prison meals and untreated ailments, he dies as he lived, controlling nothing, not even the circumstances of his own end. The official report lists the cause as natural causes, but those who knew say Marsh had been dying by inches ever since that guilty verdict stripped him of his last illusion of power. There are no mourners at his prison funeral, just a numbered plaque in an inmate's cemetery, soon overgrown with weeds. The documentary's final moments return to the hospital where Michelle's legacy thrives. A young nurse gently places her hand over Michelle's memorial plaque before walking confidently into a trauma bay, ready to save lives. The camera lingers on Michelle's hospital badge in its display case. The edges worn smooth from years of use, the photo still vibrant. As the screen fades to black, the steady beep of a heart monitor continues, a rhythmic reminder that while darkness may come for us all, the light we create while living endures. The narrator's parting words hover in the silence. Evil made its mark that April night, but goodness, Michelle's goodness, goes on working miracles every single day. Fade to black. The heartbeat continues. Then silence. Asterisk.